Welcome to the basement shop, home of the Buildist. Pull up a chair. We're about to get started. Hello and welcome back to the basement. So I'm a little bit in between major messes. So I figured I would take this opportunity to do a shop tour. So I've never measured it before, but I measured it just now, and my shop turns out to be 24 feet deep and 16 feet across. Now in this space, I have to store the bulk of my raw materials as well. Outdoors I have some long steel, some conduit, some angle iron, but anything that cannot stand the weather has got to be stored inside. So I have the shop crammed full to the gills between tools and raw materials. Now in my case, that turns out to be kind of a blessing in disguise, because I am not by nature a very neat person. I tend to fill up a space with debris no matter how big that space is. So at least this way, the total extent of my mess is limited by the space that the shop has. So I have my shop divided into a couple sections. This over here is all workbenches and hand tools. So if I need to put something on a bench and work on it, for the most part it's going to happen over there. You can see over there in the corner there are pliers, screwdrivers, crescent wrenches, that kind of thing. And the majority of the power tools that I use repeatedly, I keep hanging overhead, and I can just reach up and grab them, either plug them into this power strip, or some of them I keep plugged in. I can just use them, put them back up on the rack when I'm done. I try to have some strategies to help myself to not be so messy. Coming over here we have the big sander, my various types of clamps, the oxyacetylene torch. Now this is in the basement of my house, so I don't do a lot of oxyacetylene here inside. I have 24-foot hoses on it. I can roll the whole unit over here, take it outside. Heavy welding, torch cutting, that kind of thing, I do outside. Here at the front of this column of tools is a milling machine. I'm fairly confident this is the largest round column mill that Enco made. It's a variable speed model, 24-inch table, and as you can see, I've kind of got it fitted out for some things that make it best for me. I do an extra big vise because I use this vise for more than just metalworking. I use it for woodworking, for whatever. So I need that 6-inch opening depending on what I'm working on. I have the power feed unit that I've adapted to it. Anytime you're cutting gears, you have to run this table back and forth and back and forth. The power feed unit really makes gear cutting in particular a lot easier. When I bought the mill, it was already on this big heavy steel table on casters, which is perfect for my needs. Then this bay here contains a lot of storage, paint, lubricants, raw materials for electric work, and then the lathe cabinet and the associated lathe tooling is right back here. And now the camera was sitting right here just a second ago. Now the camera is over there, and we're looking this way somewhat towards this little bay that I have. The bay is substantially storage. I have pipe bender and my big wood lathe. Well, I have two wood lathes. My standard 6-inch wood lathe is stored on its end back here, but also my 24-inch wood lathe is stored back in that corner. So if I want to turn something on a wood lathe, I have to get that out and set it up. Here, this is all welding. This roller cabinet is full of plasma cutter, pipe bender, welding supplies, the TIG and arc welder, and then here we have the electrified 20-ton shop press. This whole unit is on wheels. There again, I can take it outside or I can get it out of the way, depending on whatever I need to do. We have the anvil on its portable anvil stand. Stays in storage tucked out of the way, but if I need to use it, it just takes a second to drag it out and use it. And finally, here we have the 18-inch bandsaw. There again, spends most of its time tucked out of the way. I keep a metal blade in it most of the time. You can't use a wood blade to cut metal, but you can use a metal blade to cut wood. It's just a little slower, and you got to get the blade good and clean before you begin, or else you may stain your wood with the oil that's up in the blade. And here we have the electrified 20-ton shop press. Now, as you can see, the press is not very usable in this status, because this is where the user should stand and this is the backside. But if you want to use it, you unhook this wire and swing it out, and now you can get to it and use it. There's an adjustable foot down there at the bottom. If I were about to use it right now, I'd reach down and screw that foot down to make contact with the floor, so that this foot is now sitting straight on the floor, and then it's perfectly stable. When it's not in use, fold it back over, and it stays out of the way. There again, it's a way of conserving floor space. And finally, back in this corner, we have the stationary air compressor. I say stationary, it's on wheels, it can be moved, but it's hooked up to the manifold that's providing air around the shop, and it, for all intents and purposes, never moves. I have a smaller compressor up in the garage for filling car tires and that kind of thing. This one just stays here providing air to the shop. Standing here at the workbench, my basic philosophy is that I should be able to see and find and reach for any of the hand tools with a single motion. Some of these pliers are a little bit deep. If I need safety wire pliers, I can set those aside and reach for the safety wire pliers. But most of the tools can be grabbed with a single reach and be put away with the same. Vice grips are a little trickier because I have to have them closed up in order to store them. I could store them in this open thing like that, but it kind of becomes a big mess with all these pliers snapped open, so I prefer to keep them like this. There are some kinds of tools that you always need a certain size or a certain type. These mini pliers are one of them. I reach for these things all the time. So I figured out a long time ago that it makes the most sense to just create this little rack. All it is a 2x4 with holes drilled that one of the handle ends slips in. And I can reach up and grab the pliers, very quickly identify which plier I'm after, pull it out, use it, put it back when I'm done. It also helps in cleaning up a mess that if I have things spread out across the shop and I'm cleaning things up, I can tell at a glance that 2 of my pliers are missing. So just by having a certain number of holes that need to be filled, then I know what I need to do. Screwdrivers, basically each screwdriver has its own hole for the most part. That's true. There's no super set place for them other than from this line over is flathead, from this line over is Phillips. The number 3 sits here, a couple of number 2s, some number 1s there. Back in here we have jeweler's screwdrivers, hooks, various types of hooks and picks, and of course the wood chisels. I have a nicer set of wood chisels for doing fine woodwork. These are what I will reach for if I just need a utility wood chisel to cut a notch real fast. It is sharp, but it's not a high quality tool by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't treat them with the deference that I would if it were a high quality tool. Up under here we have some storage. All my wood lathe tools are there, pry bars, that kind of thing. Hammers live up here. Various types of hammers depending on the situation. Measurement, safety, hearing protection, eye protection, flashlights. Spray paints and lubricants that are kept close to hand. Smaller other, things that are kept close to hand. Pencils, Vaseline, contact cement, wood glue. I keep several fire extinguishers around the shop. I have one in this corner. I have one that's actually inside of the welding rack. And I have one that I keep on that pole up there. Obviously, fire is a big deal. And fire in a shop with flammable liquids in that is a very big deal. And fire in a shop that's in your basement is the highest of big deals. So, try to take fire and fire prevention very seriously. Over here we have, this is my jumbled set of finer woodworking tools. Inside here, I built this toolbox a while back. We have wood planes, spoke shaves. These are the chisels that are kept in more or less perfect condition. Up inside here we have saws, bits for the bit brace, folding rules, that kind of stuff. Vintage kind of woodworking tools. Here we have, this file cabinet is raw materials, bottom drawers, motors. Next drawer up is solid brass things, candlesticks and other solid brass raw materials. Plumbing and electrical / electronic. This entire stack is organizers filled with, fasteners, screws, nuts, those kinds of things. In here in these drawers are some of the smaller, more delicate tools that are trickier to organize. Knife sharpening, cutting tools, some of the smaller kind of tools in that, there again, that are a challenge to organize. And up in here, taps that I keep actually in a holder to just reach for marking, scribing, welding marking. These are the grease pens you use for welding applications. In here we have small kind of, surgical or jeweler's tools kind of stuff. And then I built this organizer a while back, and all it is these sideboards have these slots, and then this sheet of masonite that slides in and out. And then each sheet of masonite has this, hardwood stop at the back. So when you draw this out, the organizer has to come with it. It's a really handy tool. Can kind of keep a whole lot of small products that otherwise would be very spread out and take up a lot of bulk space. Instead, they are, very compact and can be reached for at a single location. Down there is the rotary phase converter for the lathe and the mill. Just have it in this plywood case. On top of it is a couple more organizers, electrical products and switches, and there again, solid brass fittings and that kind of thing. Here we have the hardware organizer that I did a video on a while back. It's basically bolts and nuts, quarter, 5/16, 3/8, and half. Keep the files to hand. I have more files, but these are the ones that I use the majority of the time and can just reach for them and use them. Hand clamps, Allen keys. I have electrical outlets overhead over here. I keep all of my rotary tools hanging up here. Keep them plugged in so I can just pick it up and use it. And when I'm done with it, just hang it back on that hook. Over here is all oils, cutting oil, 3-in-1 oil, lubricant, liquid wrench, and just a squirt bottle containing water if I just need to cool something down or whatever. This organizer is dedicated to collets. These are ER40, these are ER20. Collet blocks at the back. Bulk drill bits, bulk washers, calipers and dividers, end mills and similar. I keep some of my carbide rotary tools in here, but milling kind of cutters. This is basically smaller, finer taps and dies. And then up here we have batteries and the kind of accessories that I would use with smaller tools. A numbered drill index, a standard 29-piece drill bit set, and an organizer with some of my smaller bits. These are all the same size that are in these. I'm going to be redoing my drill bits soon, and I'll cover that by video when I do. Over here we have both vices. This vise gets used most of the time with small welding projects. With the wire feed welder, I can just clamp something in this vise and grab the stinger and start welding right here at this spot. And then this vise down here is for larger things that are generally need more clamping force or more violent use of the vise. Here I have 3 grinders that I use. This one has the attachment that I built for setting the angle, or for using the angle slide in order to feed something in at a certain angle. Wire wheel here, and then this grinder, this is my coarsest wheel. This is a diamond face, and then back there we have a buffer. If I want to use the back grinder, I just flip it around and use this, and if I want to use the front grinder, then I flip it around that way. The big sander, the T-square for my table saw, acetylene torches. Inside here we have bulk tubing items, tubing and steel. And then over here we have steel and all thread, steel rod, that kind of stuff lives in that corner. And here you've probably seen before, this is my South Bend Heavy 10 lathe. The lathe itself is on its original cabinet. The cabinet is on casters, but I installed basically screw jacks to jack it up and level it. So it can't roll around right now, but if I just screw the screw jacks upward, then it would roll around. The drawers contain lathe and machinist kind of, tools and supplies. And then up here I have the things that I reach for most often. Tool holders. For tool holders, you don't need a big fancy rack. You can literally just have a sharp vertical piece of metal and they will hook on it without the slightest difficulty. Micrometers here. I have a full set up to 6 inches, but these 3 are the ones that I reach for the most often, so I keep them out. Calipers, crescent wrench. That's the key for a 4-jaw chuck. That's the key for my 3-jaw chuck. Rotary table up in there, a tilting table, spindexer. This is a piece of granite tile that I use as a surface plate. I doubt if it's within really tight specs, but it's close enough for what I do. And so there's the height gauge that I just keep sitting there upside down, and I can just pick up the tile, drop the tile here, grab the height gauge, and do what I need to do. And lastly, we have this spot, which is kind of in the corridor leading off to the rest of the basement. And this is where I store wood, in particular sheet goods. I have just enough room to store 4x8 plywood up here. So the plywood has to slide to the back of the stack, and the smaller items, smaller pieces of wood and plywood, just stack in front. It's a real challenge to, keep it neat, but everything is easy to find being stacked up like this. And then I have 2 overhead racks that I make use of. This rack over here is for pre-molded wood, crown molding, that kind of thing, and hardwoods. I have some oak flooring, I have some oak recovered from pallets and that kind of thing. And then this rack, which is above the workbench, is actually a little bit longer. I have about 16 feet of usable length on this rack. Any of the longer kind of things that I need to keep handy that wouldn't do well outdoors. And these overhead racks are a very useful way to keep this longer stuff accessible, but not have it, get in your way and take up your space. So there you have it. The home of the Buildist. Lord willing, lots more interesting projects and good content to come. Thanks for watching.